and industry here. But with that being said, Brett Smith has actually some Georgia background. Believe it or not, he is from New York and lives in New York, but he actually went to college down here at Emory. So he spent a number of years living down here in Georgia, attending Emory University. He is an entrepreneur in pretty much all aspects of the word. He has started his own companies, multiple companies, some of which he still owns and some of which he's sold off. And he is involved in just about every aspect of aviation and aerospace. He's a pilot. He and his company own some R&D firms that do aerospace technology development, and he also coordinates the purchase and sale of aviation and aerospace companies, working on a large one right now for a group out of England. So I have been incredibly impressed with him, not only professionally but personally, and am pleased that he is here with us and pleased that he is a partner with us at the airport. You aren't here to hear me, so I'll turn the mic over to Brett Smith, and hopefully at the end we will have some time to be able to jointly answer some questions for you, because I'm sure that you have some questions pertaining to the airport as well as Propeller and Silver Comet. So, Brett.
I'm at a big presentation, guys, so I'm going to not use the microphone. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Yes, thank you for that call a year and a half ago. I thought I was out of this. I didn't have to deal anymore. And yes, I think it's important to start by explaining that this is a lot different than what we worked on over in another county. At the end of that, at the end of the Briscoe Field project, we did get a call from Blake, and quite frankly, I didn't even want to meet him. I was like, it's too public. I'm not a public guy. We really just want to build a business and create something in aerospace. As a pilot, which of course doesn't mean I'm an expert in aviation. It means I know how to fly an airplane. But it's important for me in our businesses to do something that do make a difference in aviation. And I was compelled by our mutual acquaintance to meet. And I sat down, and I have to say that Blake was pretty impressive. He really understands this business. He really understands airports, more so than most of the people I've met, worldwide. He just gets it. He understands. And it really struck me that he had a business scope in his mind. He wasn't just a public employee, but he was a businessman who really and clearly cared about the county. And I've seen that all throughout the year and a half that we've been working in Paulding. It's that people here, at least your leadership, and I would say you're very lucky to have a leadership that really truly cares about the future of this county. It's not about winning elections, it's about doing what's right. And to me, that's one of the most impressive things I've seen, and really convinced our group to move forward with Silver Comet. As Blake said, the press has made this more into about commercial service, and that's really not what this is about. Of course, that's what sells newspapers. That's what gets big airlines to say things in newspapers and people to get all concerned. But the reality is, the first thing we ever even worked on was not, commercial service, and it's not the focus of what we're doing. That may come. It's not. It is a part of this, but it's a very small part. And so today, I guess we're just going to go through some of what we believe and what the leadership believes is really a strategic platform that you have. The airport was paid for almost, the bulk of it, $50 million by the U.S. government. So it's a present in a way. It's a really important piece of infrastructure that can help this county create sustainable growth and plan it in a smart way. Because there's not a lot out there right now, and I think that that's very important. But it's developing this vision through aerospace. Georgia is an interesting state. Outside of Seattle and Southern California, you have one of the highest concentrations of aerospace workers in the whole United States. There's over 160,000 people in this industry in the state of Georgia today, and I think that well, I don't think, I know that that is a conduit to creating jobs, to attracting companies here. The first thing we worked on was a proposal for a company called Dassault. It's a large French firm. It's one of the leaders in global aviation. They have a huge facility in Arkansas. They have about 1,800 people there. And they were considering moving to another location. Now, subsequently, we learned that they were really doing that, this move, or potential move, to try to get Arkansas to give them better economics. But when we gave our proposal, that we worked on, night and day for weeks and weeks and weeks, they stopped a 2-year process at the last second, and they seriously considered coming here. The CEO of the company said to me afterwards, he goes, Brett, sometimes when you've been with somebody for 40 years, and he said it in a very French way, so it was quite funny, but they tend to take you for granted. It's like, it's like my wife. I've been with her for 40 years, and sometimes we have to have a little push to keep things fresh. And he goes, if we had never been in the United States before, hands down, we would have picked Silver Comet. So those are the types of things we're working on, is bringing sustainable, good, high-paying jobs. That is the focus of this. And then, of course, bringing in these companies will trigger economic development. The focus here is to keep it local. Airports in this country support 10.5 million jobs. Now, these are not all the airports. There are close to 5,000 different types of airports in this country. But there are 490 commercial airports that have some type of commercial service. And out of those 490 airports, 10.5 million jobs are created. I mean, it's a very important part of the U.S. economy. Okay, Silver Comet. What are the key aspects of this? We have aerospace, which is the biggest, and that's where we're focused. Transportation is a piece of that. General aviation is a piece of that, and corporate is a piece of that. So, but we are working through those and trying to find the best opportunities. I can't emphasize this enough. We were asked to come in, and so we are working for you. Full stop. This is not about our agenda. It's not about our vision. It's about a joint vision. And like my French CEO friend said, this in a way is like a marriage, and it has to work for both parties. And so what does that mean? That means then when we find a potential customer for the airport, I talked to Blake about it, we end up talking to the chairman, we talk to Jamie at Economic Development and say, is this the right fit for Paulding County? And if it is, then we move forward. And if it's not, then we find something else. But it has to be in line with the growth of what the county wants and where it's going to go. But it's all about creating sustainable. So what examples of what airports create? We took a couple different airports. If you take a look at Huntsville, you'd be surprised to know, or maybe you wouldn't, that it's responsible for 5,300 jobs. You go to Chattanooga, 1,400 jobs. Mobile, Alabama, 5,000 jobs. Des Moines, Iowa, $200 million in annual payroll. Dallas Love Field, $2.8 billion in economic activity. So these numbers keep going on. Greenville, Spartanburg, Lexington, Kentucky, Phoenix, Mesa, and Manchester, Boston. These are very important aspects of all of these communities and why these communities have been successful in part. Take a look at two companies, two different cities that are relatively close to here. Mobile, Alabama has put a lot of emphasis on their airport. They convinced Airbus to put their new U.S. facility at their airport, and it created 1,000 jobs. They put $600 million into that facility. Just up the road, Chattanooga, Volkswagen, located primarily right next to the airport because the airport was there. They say that they have created 3,350 jobs. Volkswagen estimates that they're responsible for over 10,000 jobs because of the vendors that have to then come in and so forth. And they put $1 billion investment in there. Some people may be familiar with BMW's facility next to Greenville, Spartanburg. These are, marquee companies that really do create the sustainable growth and quality jobs that I believe, or that I know that the county is looking for. So what about aviation in the state? 470,000 jobs directly attributed to airports in the state of Georgia. Okay, 17.7 billion in payrolls. Economic output, $62.6 billion. I mean, these are huge numbers. Georgia ranks 8th in the nation in aerospace development. And there are over 500 companies that perform all kinds of different types of jobs throughout the state. Boeing has a facility in the state. Gulfstream, as you know, the list goes on and on and on. Huge companies doing lots of great stuff here and really leveraging the workforce that's here. And then, of course, the state of Georgia alone exports almost $3.5 billion in aerospace products. So it's a big part of the state's economy. As you can see, Georgia ranks top amongst southeastern states for R&D. Now it's approaching close to $500 million a year. And the value of exports have gone up since 2006, 174%. Georgia Tech, as everybody knows, one of the best aerospace programs in the entire world, right down the road. So you have a lot of new entrants into the job market. Let's keep them here in Georgia. So, over time, our goal is to create quality jobs and strategically do this. It's really about ready, aim, and fire. It's not about fire, aim, and ready. Okay, so we're really taking time to identify who the right targets are and go after them. Construction, engineering, architectural trades, engineering, maintenance and repair, completion services. These are all the types of jobs we're looking for. And then on-airport jobs, whether it's terminal or security or support services and so forth. That's what we're looking at. Annual payroll. Out of those 490 airports that I mentioned earlier, $365 billion a year going into people's pockets. Nearby access to workforce. I mean, the fact that Lockheed Martin is right down the road, that you have Meggitt, Pratt & Whitney, Flight Safety, these companies and these schools and universities help to bring these companies here because they know that if they locate in Metro Atlanta, in Paulding County, they can get people to start working for them today. And that's very important to them. Chattahoochee Technical College is down the road. They have a great program to get people ready to work. That's something that we use and when we go out to talk to potential manufacturers who may move here. And it's very compelling to them. The tax incentives that the airport authority and the county has been able to get that are already embedded at the airport is hugely important. We don't have to go to the state now and ask and beg them to give us incentives to let companies move here. They're already here. We can go out and we can offer them and we can get these companies to move here. And I think that that's very helpful also. The general aviation side, I mentioned Dassault. That was the first company we went to. I can't really tell who we're talking to, but there are 2 other firms on here that we are talking to right now about trying to get them to locate here. Most of you may or may not know these companies, but they're all global aerospace firms that are considered the best in class. That's for sure. Cessna, Garmin, Rockwell Collins, and so forth. Annual output, $1.2 trillion, again, from the same 490 airports. So it's critical to this country, and it's what we're really good at. The U.S. is hands down the best aerospace provider in the world. Everybody's coming here. The Chinese, they're trying to buy our companies. Luckily, we're not selling them. We're keeping this core competency here, and it's critical to the growth of the United States. I don't need to tell you this. Paulding has been, top for growth. Why is that? Well, I think part of the reason why is because you have leadership that treats this more like a business than a bureaucracy. That was key for us. When we first went into this, when I met David for the first time, I said, you guys, you really will have to want to do this. There may be some pushback. Of course, I was referring to what I had just gone through, and I said, I'm not going to try to sell you on this. It's something you either want to do or you don't want to do, and that's fine. If you don't want to do it, that's okay. And he said, this is not about David Austin. This is about providing for future generations, and people don't like it, they don't have to vote for me. To me, that was like one of the most refreshing things I'd heard in years from anybody in political office. That's the kind of, I mean, in my opinion, that's the kind of leadership that gets things done. It's not worrying about what's popular or what the right vote may be for that time, but it translates into what it will do 10 or 20 years from now. So, but this is a real number that, we're trying to change here. Approximately 75% of the workforce in Paulding County leaves the county during the day. Think about the tax dollars that are going down to Atlanta, that are going to our neighbors in Cobb and DeKalb and Fulton. It should stay here. Keeping it here. I mean, part of the reason I'm looking actually for a home now in Dallas because I'm sick of driving back and forth. I mean, I spend more time in the car than I do. The 2 hours that I spend driving back and forth, I could be working. So it's just easier to be here, and you can drive down the road and be at work. This just gives you an idea of what we're thinking about. By no means, these companies are examples, or by no means, the only one that we've officially gone after is Dassault, but unofficially. But this is the kind of, I went out, when I first saw the airport, we met with Blake, and I was like, okay, that's nice. And then Briscoe ended. I hate to talk about Briscoe, but it's important to understand at least my mindset. And I was on my way, actually, to the airport. And one of my partners who lives just down the road from here was taking me to the airport. And I said, what? Let's go and look at Paulding County. I'll get it out of my system. I can leave. I'll know that I did the right thing. And I got to the airport. Nobody was there. I said, wow, what an asset these guys have. And I was standing up on this hill. Actually, I was standing in this runway. And I think Kelly Yamaguchi called me, who's sitting right over there, and said to me, what's next? And I think it was you, Kelly. And it was the day after. And I said, that's it, we're done. And I smiled at Gil, and I knew at that moment that this was something that could be done in a different format, but it's something that could be done that really could create jobs and make a difference. In our business, at least, it's not only about the bottom line, the dollar. It's also about what does the project do? How does it contribute to the community? Those are always important things because you really have, in my opinion, you have to love what you do. And if you love what you do, you'll be successful at it. And this is what I love to do. So I'm not a real estate developer. I've had to take a crash course, no pun intended, on what it's all about. We brought in some partners on our side who do this for a living. But I can tell you, as a novice developer, that when I was standing at the end of that runway, and I looked at this, basically a white piece of paper, I said, wow, we can create something here that's special. We can build upon the award that Blake and the Airport Authority won for design and excellence from the U.S. Department of Commerce. This can be done, and it can be beautiful, and it can work with the community. And the last part is the most important thing. So this is the vision: jobs, sustainability for generations, best in class. Really put Paulding County out there as a great place to live and work, and have a balance between the two. The one thing I have noticed is that this community is small enough where it feels like a family. The level of trust that I see throughout is pretty unusual. I don't feel like this is a community with 150,000 people. I feel like it's a community with a couple thousand people because everybody seems to be on the same page, and people seem to truly care. And to me, that's important. Hire local first, operate with private company principles. I think the county does that on its own. When we were working on the Dassault proposal, Blake, Jamie, people that needed to be available, whether it was on Sunday or a Thursday night at 11:30, were picking up the phones and helping us and supporting us. The other place that we were at 4:59, the lunch pails were packed, and at 5 o'clock they were sliding down the dinosaurs, and you couldn't get them until the next day at 9 o'clock. It's not the case here. It's just not the case. I'm not going to talk too much about us. We are a private equity firm. we are based in New York. We have offices here. Actually, we do more in Atlanta than I do in New York. New York I have to be on because that's where the financial base is, and it's easier access for us. And then, of course, and then Dublin, Ireland, because that's a lot of aviation is based in Dublin. I kind of run the show, but not really. We all are partners, and we work together. It's not my way or the highway. I think that's very important in our philosophy of how we get things done, is to take all things into consideration and have the right people there. Gil Morgan, who would have been here, but he had a meeting over at Lockheed this morning, is our COO. Gil grew up down here. He's a Georgia Tech aerospace graduate, former Delta, AirTran, president of World Airways. Some of you in the military may know World. They transport our troops all over the world. Derek Roberts is our Chief Financial Officer, former Treasurer of JetBlue. Mark Reachin is our Chief Commercial Officer. PJ McGoldrick runs Europe. He's the former CEO of Ryanair, which is like the Southwest Airlines of Europe. And then Tom Peck runs our investment banking side, and he lives in Atlanta. On our board, we've tried to pick people not only that we know well, but who are smarter than us, who can give us advice in their fields. Howard Harris, former president of Delta and then CEO of Continental. I'll just say a few of them. David Hurley, who will come down here, he's going to come down here soon. He's already been through the airport and understands it. Chairman of the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. Ross Fisher, chairman of Miami Air. I have to take this name off. I can't because emotionally. Dean Booth was our lawyer. He's at Miller Martin. Grew up and lived his entire life in Atlanta. And if it wasn't for him, I actually wouldn't be here today. He was one of the most brilliant aerospace lawyers that I've ever met. Classic Southern gentleman. Whether he was always wearing a tie and always impeccably dressed and just a good, decent human being. Anyway, he just passed, and I haven't taken it off yet. But so this is what our scope of services is. This is what Blake and the chairman and the airport authority have brought us in for, is overall complex development, attracting these quality manufacturers, bringing in corporate aviation and terminal development. But it's really about leveraging our relationships, the people that we've worked with over our careers, to get them here. That's what it's about. To bring in revenue-producing entities that are going to create these jobs that are well-paying for your kids and for generations. What does the county expect to receive out of this? Well, the county will get landing fees, ad valorem taxes on based aircraft. They'll get a revenue split on our gross sales, ground rental income, terminal concessions, sales tax revenue, of course hospitality sales tax revenue as that comes in, and then retail revenue as well. So, there's full transparency. Blake, Jamie, the chairman, and the authority know what we're doing. At all, there's nothing that's done without us making sure that it's the right thing that fits the needs and the wants of this county. And I think that's important. I put this slide in here because I think it's important. So this is a turboprop aircraft called a Pilatus. It's not very big, but it's expensive actually. It's a $4 million aircraft. But just to see the effect, if you base one of these aircraft here, the county gets $51,000 plus in ad valorem tax. It's just found money for somebody basing their aircraft here. As you go up the food chain and go to Bombardier's Global 5,000, you're looking at almost $600,000. This can go and be used for anything that the county needs it to be: schools, fire department, teachers, and so forth. And it's a big deal. And this is our final thought. I'll let you read it, but it's really about not only economic development, but a legacy that we can all be proud of. And at least that's a big part of what we're doing it for. It's you don't see, especially in this day and age when everybody is arguing and criticizing, and this country has changed a little bit to my chagrin. World War II came around, and the P-51 in 90 days went from drawing board to test flight. I don't think we could do that today. I just don't think it's possible. Everybody, it's not streamlined enough, and that's what it's fun about working here. Is that we are streamlined and we can do things, and we can get things done, and that's kind of what it's about. I'm going to leave you with this video because Kentucky, I just think this is a great video to show what airports do. Has put a lot of emphasis on their airport and building it smartly, and I'll just let it run through, and it's not very loud. That was smart. So with that, I'll take any questions or that I can't answer. Blake, I'm sure can answer. Who wants to be first?
If for some reason the commercial side gets tanked by whoever, I read that y'all were going to do something on your own to go around it anyway, but even if that is blocked, would you go ahead with all this commercial, trying to get jobs, et cetera, without the commercial piece?
Absolutely. So that's a very good question. We're not starting our own airline. That I can assure you. It's not a business I want to be in. But doing the deal, at least in our minds, with the county, had the development side had to stand on its own, because I don't know when commercial is going to come. It may come in a month, it may come in a year, or it may never come. That's not what we're basing on. So, yes, we will continue.
I've heard that we're going to be dumping airline fuel on people, and it's pretty much out there on the internet. It also says on the internet that I'm a French model.
I'm not going to comment on the second part. I'm going to let somebody who's more of an expert than me answer that question. Carrie, do you mind taking a stab at that one?
Sure. Actually, Chairman Austin is a French model. I was just in Paris recently, and his picture's all over. No, just from a technical standpoint, and it's the only thing I'm qualified to speak on here at all this morning, is there was some misinformation getting pushed around about jet fuel being dumped from airliners. From a technical standpoint, it's not true. So I've been in aviation going up nearly 30 years. About that 30 years, coming up on 20 professionally. So military and aviation, commercial, private, and now airline with my company. But it doesn't happen. There is some of the larger jet aircraft, commercial aircraft do have the ability to dump fuel, but it is an emergency maneuver, and it's only larger aircraft. Most small aircraft these days do not have that ability. They don't have that type system. So we're only talking wide-body type aircraft, larger aircraft that their gross weights are such that if they were to take off in a very heavy gross weight scenario and they needed to make an emergency return to the airport, the dump, that is what it's for. It's to reduce their gross weight quickly so that they can get the airplane back to the runway in the event of an engine failure, and that's it. But it's not anything that happens routinely. It's just not a normal thing to happen. So, and in my 30 years in aviation and all of that flying, I've never done 1 gallon of gas. First of all, it's too expensive. You don't want it done. And I've had engine failures and did not dump. So even in that scenario, it's not a requirement. It's at the pilot's discretion, but it is a life-saving maneuver. And that's the only reason it exists. So that's it.
Can I ask you another question about noise and how maybe a 757 or 37 maybe compares to a Harley Davidson?
How many Harley riders are here before I answer that question? On noise, again, like from a technical standpoint, noise, jet aircraft noise, the technology has come so far in the last 20 years. General Electric, Pratt & Whitney, these aircraft companies, obviously, due to environmental pressures and persuasion, have put literally billions of dollars into hush. They call it hush technology, whisper kits, things of this nature. But the standard turbofan engine, which is what you see on just about all commercial aircraft of today, it's called a high bypass engine. The technology is high bypass, meaning that most, and this is real technical, and I'm sorry, but most of the air actually goes around the turbine section. It doesn't go through it and get compressed. As most in the room know, in the combustion engine, it's the compression that makes the noise, right? Well, in this type of jet technology, the air goes around, it gets accelerated and goes out the back and turns into thrust, but it doesn't get compressed. So therefore, the engines of today are incredibly quiet. To put an example, a 757, and just pulling up some sort of gee-whiz noise data for myself recently when I began to read some of the things, I was like, well, how loud are these things these days? And I fly them all the time. And I'm passing my hearing test still, thank the Lord, every year. But my wife doesn't believe that for some reason. She thinks I should be failing it, but I continue to work with her on that, and my 3 daughters. But the 757 at full power, we are able to uncover just full power. If you're standing on the runway out there, which you would never do, puts out about 120 decibels or so, and that's if you're standing on the runway. When you move that distance out to just a short distance of a half a mile, that 120 decibels goes down to, I think it was around 90, 80-ish decibels or so. David, I think we looked at that.
70.
Yes, 70. Yeah, 65 to 70, which according to the noise experts, and I'm not, 65 to 70 is, I think, the FAA's definition of the annoyance level. That's when the average person would say, oh, that's kind of, I don't like that. 65 to 70. That 120 decibels, to get down to that 65 or 70, you only have to be not even hardly a mile away. It turns out that a Harley Davidson motorcycle in a residential area puts out about 105 to 110 decibels. So what's the point of that? The point of that is most likely you're going to hear a Harley Davidson motorcycle going down Highway 278 before you're ever going to hear anything from our airports. So, but anyway, again, that's gee-whiz type stuff. But that's, for an analogy, that's kind of what it is. So, yes, sir.
Questions for us? Smith, right? How much in relation to county government spending money for improvements on the airport versus how much the FAA or the government will contribute to any improvements in the airport?
Yeah.
Let me take-
Why don't you take that, because you're dealing with that stuff.
Yeah, Brett's really not on the infrastructure side. The airport, we're on the infrastructure side. He spends his funds on things like the terminal building renovations that are going on. That's their nickel. But as far as runways, taxiways, anything with infrastructure in the airfield, that's ours. We have two projects going on right now. One is a safety overrun project to increase the safety overrun distance off the end of the runway. That project has been funded by the FAA, and I say it's been funded. They fund 90%. So they funded 90% of that project. The county's paid the other 10%. However, we were able to kind of work a little magic there with the fire station. The county was ready to build a fire station out in that area, and we were able to use the dirt that they needed to take off the fire station site as the dirt that we used for the safety overrun area. So we were able to degrade the fire station with the project that expanded the safety overrun. So even though the county paid the $130,000 match for the grant for the project, they saved over $300,000 in what it would have cost them to move the dirt off the site. So we actually made money off moving the dirt off the fire station site, so that worked out really well. The other project that we have right now is the taxiway extension and widening. We're widening our parallel taxiway from 35 feet to 50 feet so that it will match all the rest of the taxiways that we have on the airport, and then extending it out 500 feet to get it down to the end of the runway. When we built the runways and taxiways in 2008, we kind of ran out of money, so we stopped 500 feet short of the end of the runway. So we're doing that now. That total project cost is about $3.3 million, and it is eligible to be reimbursed by the FAA at that 90%. So at some point in time in the future, the FAA will give us our money back on that, 90% of it. And we are using, hopefully, a bond option to go ahead and do that project now to get it completed, and look for that FAA reimbursement as soon as we can get it. Does that answer your question?
I'd like to add that as a partner in this quote-unquote marriage, that regardless if the bond goes through or not, we'll step up to the plate as your partner and provide it. So until the FAA pays it back. I mean, this is something that we're committed to, and we made a deal, a pledge, and we had a handshake that we were going to work on this together. And so what obstacles come up, we'll find ways around. Because in 20 years, when people are working out there, they won't have a statue for me. They may have a statue for you. No. But
French
French statue. No, but it's being committed to the project. Sure.
That aerial of the airport for those companies listed, are those the companies that are already committed?
I wish. No, these are examples of where we're going
Just
now.
examples.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What experience do you and Propeller have in operating any other commercial airport?
That's a very good question. So Gil Morgan.
To this scope.
To this scope, not to this scope, but
So zero.
well, no, actually. So Gil Morgan, our chief operating officer, who I'm happy to let you talk to, he's here almost all the time, ran all terminal facilities for Delta Airlines at Hartsfield. So it's a little bit bigger than this. But I think that with the scale, we're able to handle it. So he ran all the terminal space for them. He negotiated all the leases. He also is in charge of all corporate real estate in Atlanta and 23 other cities. And then when he was at AirTran, he ran about 40 different cities for AirTran. So,
My question was about you and Propeller.
well, our people have experience in this area.
Okay, so I assume that you have no experience.
Me personally,
No direct experience in operating.
I'm providing the money and providing our business contacts to bring people to. Blake is running the airport. Okay, he runs the infrastructure side. He's good at it, and that's their responsibility. Our responsibility is to bring in the business.
Blake, what experience do you have in operating a commercial airport?
In operating?
Mm-hmm.
I have no experience in operating a commercial airport.
Okay, thank you.
Question for Blake.
Yes.
We know where Uncle Sam gets his money, but where does the FAA get theirs? I don't think everybody's clear
The
on that.
FAA? Yeah, the FAA generates their funds that they use for projects like this, for airport improvement projects. They're called AIP, Airport Improvement Program. They generate it from the taxes on your airline ticket. So, whenever it used to be a few years ago, you would see AirTran advertise a special $59 each way to Orlando, and then you would go on to book it, and it would come up to $189. And you go, well, how in the world is $59 each way? How did it end up being $189? Well, taxes, fees that are attached to it, and a lot of those taxes and fees go back to the FAA, and as well as tax on the aviation fuel, on the jet fuel, go back to the FAA. And the FAA utilizes those funds to upgrade the aviation infrastructure in our country. So the money that's coming into our airport, that's being spent on our airport, is being generated by Paulding County citizens every time you fly somewhere. And that has been the truth going back all the way to the 70s, that this money has been generated into the FAA since the 70s. So anybody from Paulding County since 1970 who took an airplane flight somewhere paid money into the system. And if you don't have an airport locally, then of course that money just goes somewhere else and it's spent in some other community. So, right now we have out at the airport, we have, as I said, a couple projects going on. But one thing that I wanted to emphasize here, Brett and his company, Silver Comet, they're doing the renovations on the terminal facility. They could have chosen any architect, any contractor they wanted to. It was solely at their discretion. They're not a government, so they don't have to go out and bid work like we do. They could select who they wanted to use. And they came to us and said, we need an architect, we need a contractor. We want to use local people, we want to use people that y'all are comfortable with. So, Jim Croft and Associates, who's a chamber member, incredibly involved in the county, has been on the EDO board, has done the architectural work. Prime contractors who Keith Dunn, up until just a couple of months ago, lived here in Paulding County, but he and a lot of his employees live here in the county. They've done a lot of work for us in Paulding County. They're very involved in the community. They are doing the contracting work on the facility. So, what Brett said earlier about they want to keep the jobs local, they're going to a great extent to do that, even with the construction projects that they're paying for. They could have gone out and bid that out and perhaps gotten a cheaper contractor from Alabama to come over and do the work, or somebody from some other part of the state to come in and do the work, but they chose to use local folks that we were comfortable with to do the work. And that's the same approach that they have taken on everything, is they want to be a true partner, not just come in and heavy hand and do what they want to do, but they run everything past us and talk to us about everything that they do.
Well, yeah, and actually, we're actually partnered with Airports de Paris, which is another French company. I'm not a Francophile, but it just turned out that way. And they're the second largest airport operator in the world. 40 plus airports. And we didn't even use them on this project. So I got flack from that, but I thought it was important that everything is done locally. So we told them, sorry, we can't work with you on this particular project. Yes, ma'am.
A question that I hear people ask all the time is, how could the 2 flights a day that you're claiming the airport would handle roughly?
It's a startup.
Approximately.
Actually, it's not
Startup.
2 flights a day. It's like 2 flights a week.
2 flights a week. Better yet, how can that possibly support the operations of the airport?
Well, because see, we're going after the other things like Rockwell's of the world and Gulfstreams and those types of companies. So that's just a piece of it. And so to us, if you have already now, if we had to build a facility, if you had to build a brand new terminal, and that would be a different story. But the terminal was there, so we didn't have to build a multi-million-dollar facility. We're renting it now. It's a terminal that hasn't been used since really,
2010 when we built it.
2010. So, from our perspective, we're also helping the county out because we're now able to offset some of their costs by leasing this out. But again, the commercial service aspect is not the driver. If this airport did not have a white sheet to work on it, I'm not sure we'd be here, because that's where it's going to come.
so the commercial really is not essential.
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you.
So this is, let me make one thing very clear. This is not Atlanta's second airport by any means. I mean, it's just not. You know, Hartsfield will do more in one day than this airport could do an entire year for the foreseeable future. It's just not going to happen.
Yes, one final question. I've read in the newspaper about environmental challenges to this, some sort of legal stuff. Can anybody elaborate on that?
I can elaborate a little bit, but not in any great detail. My understanding is that there's a law firm out of Washington D.C. that is supposedly representing some local citizens. How they made that connection, I don't know. And they have filed some paperwork with the FAA, questioning the FAA's approval of our environmental documents. As far as I am aware, they're making no allegations that we did anything wrong. And as far as I'm aware, the FAA did everything correctly as they're supposed to. I'd be shocked for anybody to suggest the FAA is not doing their job correctly. But there are some inquiries that the FAA is making to make sure that everything was done correctly, and that's about the extent of what I know right now.
Blake, 139 airports in the state?
104.
104.
Yes, sir.
And about 9 of those are commercial.
Yes, sir.
And how long were you president of the Georgia Airports Association and working with all those airport directors and contacts that you have with them?
Well, the president of the Georgia Airport Association rotates every year, so there's only president for 1 year. I've been on the board of directors for the Georgia Airport Association for, I guess, 9 years now.
Gain a lot of experience by talking to those folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's fortunate that we have a good organization in the state of Georgia. You know, I can reach out to Lewis Miller at Hartsfield, and he will gladly take my call. I can reach out to Jim Galloway down in Valdosta. I can reach out to Tim Beggerly over at Athens. Fortunately, all the airport managers, since there's only 104 of us, we're all pretty tight, and we work together very closely. So those guys are a constant resource for us, and a lot of them have visited our airport. As a matter of fact, we had Steve Bryan, who ran Brunswick Airport for a very, very long time, came up and spent a couple of days with us, looking at the facility, giving us advice, just helping us out with understanding what commercial service is and what it requires, and what changes would need to be made. So, yeah, we have very good contacts and good resources for that. Sure do.
Have you one last question?
Okay, if there's not going to be a lot of commercial traffic, it sounds like there'll probably be mostly non-commercial traffic, corporate. What kind of load do you think we would get of traffic, non-commercial? 10 flights a day, maybe small planes? I mean, what do you foresee?
Well, I mean, if you have maintenance and repair, people are just flying in, the planes end up staying there for weeks or months, depending on what it is. So I don't think anybody's going to notice any difference whatsoever. It's just not, I mean, the C-130s that are coming in and the Blackhawks that are flying around, they're not going to be able to do that. Maybe they probably won't be able to do that as much. So that would actually decrease some of the noise. I know that sounds maybe counterintuitive. There are, departure and arrival procedures already for this airport. They keep it, the FAA tries to keep planes out of residential areas on purpose. The good news is there's not a lot of residential out there. So I don't think you're going to hear, as Carrie had mentioned, these planes are significantly quieter. I mean, I fly a Cirrus. It's a little turbo. It's a little, not even a turbo. It's a little piston engine, and it's a lot louder than most of the commercial planes.
Well, I live on a mountaintop about 2 mountains over, and I've never heard of one. Never.
It's interesting you say that. I was recently in College Park, 3 miles from Hartsfield. I hear one plane. So it just depends on where you're located. Certainly if you stand at the end of the runway, you're going to hear something. But if you are 2 miles away and 30 degrees to the left or the right, or 20, you're not going to hear it. That is correct.
I heard an interesting story when Blake was president of the Georgia Association, the manager of Lake Oconee Airport. And they were building the airport, and again, I didn't build this airport, I inherited it. I'm gonna make it a success. But he was working on building the airport, and his granddaddy was very opposed to the airport. And he said, son, I want to ask you, who the hell is ever going to fly into Lake Oconee Airport? Well, as you know, George Bush ran for president, had a fundraiser. George Bush flew in, and after that, he walked out to his grandfather's grave and said, Granddaddy, just want you to know the President of the United States just flew in. So there's no telling where they'll come from, but I think that, you know, what it is for me, and I promised y'all this when I ran, that I would work on creating economic development and bringing jobs here. Not to have commercial would be like saying to Jerry Bullock, who's a cabinet maker, I want you to go out and build cabinets. I want you to be very successful, but you can't use wood. Now, you can use any other product you want to use, but you can't build it out of wood. So this is just a small portion of the whole concept of what we're trying to do there about creating jobs and taking advantage of a $50 million asset. And you've heard me say this before. In Matthew 25, the man that took the talent and he made 10% was rewarded the highest, and the man that buried it was absolutely punished. So if y'all want to, we'll end on that.
Well, I think there was one other.
On the selfish side, how soon should we expect to be able to fly out of this airport?
Gentlemen?
Today.
You can fly out there now.
And do you fly to the Biloxi?
Is that a request?
Hopefully soon, but I honestly can't tell you. It's the good news is that you have leadership that's not willing to be manipulated and allowing this to go forward properly.
But possibly as soon as February, but who knows?
Who knows?
You should parachute out, Ryan.
You know, I would encourage anybody in this.
Okay,
I think this will be our last question. James.
Thank you, Don. Just want to kind of make a comment and get your thoughts on this, but as the Economic Development Director of Paulding, when I see what is going on right now with the situation with Delta and their team of lawyers descending on Paulding to fight this, I can't help but imagine the equivalent, to put it into some perspective, would be as if we were working with, let's say, an electric car manufacturer that was looking at one of our industrial parks, and we had this deal and we were working to get their facility set up, and Ford Motor Company sent in their folks to do everything possible to kill that project. That is the equivalent of what we're seeing with Delta. And I would say this as a community, and I've been doing this for 20 plus years now, any community, whether you agree with this project or disagree, that supports the idea of groups and businesses coming in to try to tell this community what's in its best interest, that's not the direction you want to go, because they may be on your side this time, but next time around, they could be completely opposed to what you want. The idea is to get this settled and squared away with this community, and that's how it always should be. I would not want a project that I'm working on to have a company like Ford come in and tell me you can't get that electric vehicle company there.
Amen.
Thank you.
Just one quick question. Mr. Smith, first, I thank you for coming here today and talking to everybody. I appreciate you taking the time. Good information. I wish that we could have had it at a bigger location and had more of the citizens around and got their questions answered. But I think you've answered a lot of questions this morning, but some of what that I have seen out as I'm talking to people, emails, phone calls, and so forth, their number one concern that they have, the number one concern is the commercial piece of this pie. That's number one. The citizens are for the jobs. They're for economic development, if we're bringing businesses in here, they're for all that. But the commercial piece of that pie, they're not. And a lot of them are worried that we open up the door for 2 flights a week, it becomes 2 flights a day, and then what is it going to be down the road in the future? Because they feel like once that door is open that they can't control it. So that's their number one concern. So my question to you today is this: if that piece of the pie is not the most important thing, and we can do everything else without the commercial side of it. I live in that area. If we can do everything else without the commercial end of it, would you consider not doing the commercial? Because the commercial end of it's where, from what I can tell, you're getting your kickback. That's where everybody's pushing back. They don't want to see it. They want the jobs. They want the airport to be successful. They want to bring industry into that. That's been the design from the beginning. But the commercial piece of the pie is what they don't want. So would you consider not doing that, and then a lot of this would go away, and I think we would have.
I want to address that first, because we got the same kickback when we tried to do a memorandum of agreement with the military to allow the National Guard to come in and do training. We got the same kickback. And I'm of the opinion that if we had somebody coming in here and doing a facility to do maintenance on aircraft, the same small group of individuals that's raising so much cane would be saying, oh, those planes are getting maintenance done on them. They're going to fall out of the sky. They're not safe. I think we'd be getting the same kickback no matter what.
I think it would be different. I think if you bring 737s in and land, and you're refurbishing and painting and remodel new engines, whatever it is you're doing, and they're coming in, and that's what I think that would be good. I'm just saying that as a person in the community, I appreciate you being here this morning, answering questions. But as a person in the community, that's the number one thing that I'm hearing, is that commercial side of the pie. They're nervous about. And
Well,
I don't blame them.
I think that me and Blake, we've discussed this, would be more than happy to have meetings up at the airport. Anybody who wants to come and answer questions and listen. Because I think one of the biggest problems is people don't understand, and they all of a sudden, you Google anything, you get the answer you want today. So planes crashing, jet fuel, and you see all these things, and they're missing.
But I think what they're most nervous about is if we open the door to this just 2 flights a week now, what's it going to be in the future that they don't have any control over? And that's what they're concerned about. I think that's the number one thing.
It's a federal.
No, I'm not. The people that I'm talking to that are out there, that's what they're concerned about. The rest of it, I feel like they support you 100% with. And so I'm here to say that they support you with most of it, but the commercial side of it is where they're scared, they're concerned.
Well, I can give you my opinion. I think it's irrelevant, and obviously it would be fairly on one side. The reality is we can't. If you're at a train station, couldn't say Amtrak can't come here, but everybody else can. There are certain things that we can and can't do. These are federal dollars that have gone into this facility, and there are certain things that we're going to have to do. Now, the reality is whether look, I'm not going to comment on one particular company's comments, but when I hear, it's very unprecedented to hear a CEO of a company basically telling a county that they're not allowed to grow their county because he doesn't like it. Well, I mean, I think it starts with a C and ends with a P. Okay, I don't think that's fair. Again, we're here as a partner on the business side. Okay, so I'm not going to comment on that. I certainly don't think the relevance of the mayor of Atlanta telling him what he thinks is. I mean, you might as well ask Vladimir Putin what he thinks, because it's irrelevant. But I don't even know where I'm going with that.
Listen, there might be some other questions. You guys can stick around.
We'll stick around, and we should do some of these community meetings.
One more. This is the last one.
I just want to say that I've talked with lots of people throughout the entire county and community. I haven't heard or talked with a single person that's against commercial.
Sure.
Right.
Thank you.
Brett and Blake, let's thank them for the presentation. Thank you. Just a couple of quick things.